Hey, you guys. Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday, August 13th, right? 13th. Yeah, the 13th. We're in the middle of August already. How does that happen? So good to see you guys. And I see the folks coming in. William, you were the first in the comment section, so congrats on being first. You're watching from LA, which is great. Emily, hi Emily, from watching from Detroit. Colin, David Beach, good to see you. Charles and Lauren, NYC. Hi Adam. Yes, isn't that something about Paramount TV? Yes, I'm telling you, lots is changing. There's a lot going on. Hi, Allie from North Idaho. I'm saying hello from Southwest Idaho, Boise area, Orange County. Hi, Casey and Kathy and Richard. Boy, we have all over Orange County, Ohio, Louisiana. Hi, Chase, Montana, New Bern, North Carolina. I love it. Huntsville. Hi, Robin and Jan and Diane. So good to see all of you guys. Yeah, so I'm sure you guys saw the hi Tina and Marquita. Emily, it's National Left-Handers Day. Woohoo. I'm not a left-hander, but my mama was. So they'll always have a sweet place in my heart. So last week we saw the articles that basically said cable television is dead. What happened last week was all these major conglomerates trying to get their balance sheets more accurate. Some it's happening because of deals or buyout deals that they're pursuing, but basically they have to make their balance sheets work, and so they had to take a look at all of their cable stations and realize that they aren't worth anywhere near what they had once valued them to be, and ended up taking millions and millions and millions, maybe billions of dollars in write-offs for their cable stations, and which was a very huge eye-opener to the fact that cable television, traditional cable television, cable stations are really, they're in a different place now. Streaming is taking over or has taken over, and new media, other not what we would call non-traditional platforms, are becoming the traditional platforms now. So that was last week, which was huge. And then the news today that Paramount Television is basically ceasing operations and shutting down, and they're transferring all of the shows that they were producing over to CBS Studios, and they're no longer going to be functioning as their own TV studio, TV production entity, and are shutting that down. So that's pretty telling as well. They're going to rely on other places to make the content as far as TV goes. So very different, very interesting. We'll see what that looks like. Streaming, of course, is still going strong, and I think that's just going to continue to fill the void for sure. So we'll see. It's interesting. Let's see. Jared says, I want to be like William Viriato. I love it. Sandy Miller, you're tuning in for the first time from Atlanta. We're so glad to have you. I'm glad you're here. Adam, yes, seismic shift. You're right. Those two things were not a little shift. Those were major shifts in what has been the landscape of cable television and TV production. Colin's asking, what does that mean for their streaming service? I don't know for sure, and I didn't read anything that talked about that specifically, but I think it may mean that they're going to rely on other content possibly, or rely on other content to fill the platform, or maybe they'll rely more heavily on the films, because none of this is affecting their motion picture division. It's just the TV production. So I don't know, maybe they'll find alternative content or partner with other studios to provide content for their platform, which is a possibility. I mean, that's what Netflix does. They do their own content, but then they also have acquisitions and acquire content. So I don't know. I think that's a to be determined to see what's going to happen there. So, okay. Hi, Bonnie Johnson. I'll say the same back to you. Hey there, pretty lady. Good to see you. So tonight I wanted to, I first of all, I released a breakdown for Blue Ridge for the first 2 episodes of season 2. For Blue Ridge, it went out to, it would have gone out in the Southeast via Corrigan and Johnston Casting. Joanna Jowett and Mitzi Corrigan are the casting directors who are handling the Southeast regional casting. So theirs went out through breakdowns, but it did not go out through Actors Access in that region. My breakdown under my name, Beverly Holloway Casting, went out in basically all of the other markets. New York, LA, then the Midwest, the Oklahoma, Colorado, Utah, those regions. And I did post mine on Actors Access. So if you don't see it come up on your Actors Access, it's probably because you're in the Southeast, and they're at this point, they're not doing an Actors Access release. So get with your agents and make sure they're looking for it, and just double check and see. There's not a ton of roles. I'll be honest. There's not a ton of roles. We also are being very efficient in the budget to ensure we don't have, too many speaking roles. And we're being very tight with Gary Wheeler, who's the writer, producer, director, has written it very tightly so as to keep costs manageable for the season. But there are some great roles, and some are local hire only, and those will be noted in the Southeast breakdown. It's going to shoot in Charlotte. September 26th through November 8th is when the first 4 episodes will shoot. And as I mentioned, this breakdown that just went out is just for the first 2 episodes, not all 4 yet, but we'll release these 2, and then in a few weeks we'll release the breakdown for the second 2. So you can go look for it. Casey, you saw it. That's great. Emily sees it. Good. So I know it's out there. I'd gotten a notification that it went out, so that's good just to confirm that. So yeah, I'll let submissions come in, and then we'll start going through those and looking through them and start the process. But as a result of that, getting that breakdown out, I had to look something up in the SAG agreement, and came across the new pages that are pertaining to the audition guidelines. And so I want to go through that to just ensure, one, that you guys know what those guidelines are. And yes, the guidelines I'm going to talk about only apply to SAG-AFTRA projects, but typically non-union projects and casting directors will start to pick up whatever the industry standard is. And so these guidelines basically are the new industry standard for audition guidelines. So I'd love to go through them, and have any questions you want to talk about, just chime in. I'm looking at the comments, but we're just going to go section by section, and I'll try to cover it as quickly as possible, but I just want to make sure you know them. So let's start. So this is regarding self-tapes. Okay. Following applies when a producer invites a performer to submit a self-tape for a role. Again, right now, this is just SAG-AFTRA, but this will become the norm, I believe, kind of audition norm. The producer shall make character breakdown sides and/or scripts available for the performer's agent or other represented at least 48 hours prior to the deadline for submission, which means you now should have a mandatory 48-hour turnaround between the time you get the sides and, well, your agent does. Now, we just need to make sure your agent is being efficient in getting those to you. I think most of them are. But from the time that we send the materials either out to you directly or to your agent, it's 48 hours turnaround. Okay. Prior to so that excludes Saturdays and Sundays and holidays. So no more can we count Saturdays and Sundays as your part of your prep time. Okay. Let's see. If the performer is a minor, so some of you who are parents and working with your kids, subject to educational requirements, the producer shall make character breakdown sides. At least 72 hours prior to the deadline for submission of the self-tape, again, excluding Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays. Foregoing deadlines do not apply when casting deadlines do not permit. So basically, the standard is now 48 hours for your typical audition and for adults, and then 72 hours for kids. They did put the line in there, basically, except for when casting deadlines don't permit. So, for example, that would be if we lost an actor at the very last minute and we literally have 24 hours to get tapes and turn it around and turn it in. That would be an exception. If there's some extenuating circumstance that doesn't allow us to give those standard turnaround times. So if we give you something short of 48 hours for adults or 72 hours for kids, then we should have a reason, or you can certainly ask, why is this a short turnaround? And you should be given a reason. And then one last little thing. It says the producer shall also endeavor to respond to any inquiries from a performer whom it has invited to submit a self-tape, or their agent or representative, as to whether the role has already been cast. And so that comes up from the standpoint of sometimes we put a breakdown out, we invite a bunch of people to audition for a role, and in between the time we've invited you to audition and the time we actually get your tape, the role may have been cast. Or in between the time that you submitted to the time that we're getting tapes in, the role has already been cast. That can happen because the director or producer thought of someone that they just want to go to. It could be that we did a first round of tapes and someone from that kind of rose to the top. So what this is saying is basically you can ask and inquire, has this role already been cast? And we, of course, need to disclose that if in fact we have. So, okay, so next section, number 2, performers shall not be asked to perform more than 8 industry standard pages of scripted material at the producer's election for a first self-tape, or more than 12 industry standard pages for a second self-tape. Upon request of a performer with disability, producers shall make a reasonable accommodation to provide materials in format accessible to that performer. So basically now sides, I've been always famous for sending a lot of sides. And so now for a first self-tape, it's 8 pages. You should not be sent more than 8 pages. And then for a callback or a second self-tape, we can go up to 12. So, which typically I don't think that you will, but sometimes if it's a lead role or a very important or prominent role, then we will increase the pages. Now, one of the things that often happens is we'll send out like 8 pages for the first audition, and then when we're doing the callback, we send you an additional 4 pages, in which case you don't have to relearn, you just have to touch up and refamiliarize yourself with the first 8 you already got originally, and then add the first 4. Or if we send you, 2 additional scenes, we might adjust, hey, you're going to do scene 2 and 3 from your original pages, and then here's a new scene to do. But again, it shouldn't be more than the 12 pages total for that callback. So that is the new standard as far as how many pages you can be sent for a first read and then for a second read. Okay. Number 3. Now, this is an interesting one because I get this question a lot. Performers may not be asked to memorize any materials nor be prohibited from holding sides and or using a prompting device during the self-tape. No compensation is due to a performer for a self-tape. So I've been asked about this, about do we need to be memorized? Are we allowed to hold sides? So again, in LA, based in LA, the industry standard has always been you could hold sides. You didn't have to be memorized. Other parts of the country, I realized, especially as I would either go and teach in other places, or the question would come up in the self-tape process in different regions about there was a default that it had to be fully memorized. And so we're now stating the default is you do not have to be fully memorized, and you don't, and you can hold the sides. I've seen some people put the sides on a prompt like in front of them, and so they can reference it. Maybe it has, key phrases or the script itself. But you can have that and use that, and that shouldn't go against you. But I will say you need to learn. Performance is key. So if you don't know the kind of performance, nuanced excellence, layered performance that that we're looking for, then you need to understand we're okay with you not memorizing it. We're okay with you holding the sides, but we're not okay with subpar performances. So you still have to figure out how to really dive into the character. And if anything, it's like, don't spend your time memorizing the lines, spend your time diving into the character and the character's world, and understanding your connections to the character and the world building, and who is this person, what are they feeling, what are they living, where are they, what's happening. Spend your time doing that, now that we're saying you don't have to spend your time memorizing it. Okay. All right. This is a minor technical one, but performers shall not be asked to record the self-tape at a resolution higher than 720p, or required to use any uploading delivery site or talent listing service that, and it's on the next page, that is not free to the performer to upload or deliver the self-tape, nor be asked to use any editing software or any specific equipment, including brands or models of cameras, types of lights, brands, models of mics, types of background backdrops included. So basically, we can't say to you, hey, we want you to have this particular background, or we need you to go out and get this camera. Now, we can make recommendations to you based on what we know and what we've learned or what we've heard from other actors, but we can't require it of you. Basically, whatever camera you have, your iPhone, your Google Pixel phone, whatever it is you have, it's fine. But I will tell you, it needs to look good. Like, you need to be clear. The lighting needs to be good. The sound needs to be good. We're just not telling you how you have to accomplish that. But you do want to make sure that you come across professionally, and that we're able to see you and hear you clearly, so that you're not at a disadvantage compared to others. So don't need specific equipment, but we do want it to look professional, and professional from the standpoint of not look like someone shot it professionally. Like, you don't need to go out and spend money to have someone shoot your self tapes professionally. That's what not what I'm saying. When I say to look or sound professional, I mean clear, and not like poor resolution or trash trucks in the background and we can barely hear you. That's what we mean as far as professional. Yeah. So, okay. 5, this has to do with slates. So I see Ann Keeney. You said most auditions ask for me to use WeTransfer. Is that still okay for them to ask that? So WeTransfer, I believe there is a free version of that. WeTransfer is something that I do think you should have, that you should just invest in, because it is a very reliable and preferred way of transferring larger files. I guess if you wanted to really push the issue because you have to pay for WeTransfer, you could push the issue and say, hey, I need a free way to be able to send this, and WeTransfer costs me money. But I would weigh that with the tools that you have, because you're investing in your craft. Oh, I'm getting okay. So yes, there's a free one. So basically they're saying we can't require you to have to use a service that's going to cost you money in order to audition for our project, SAG-AFTRA project. So um, that's basically it. So there are ways to, if we send an audition request, let's say through Actors Access, and you're simply responding to that request and sending in a tape, that won't cost you money um, through the Actors Access. But you can pay to have the enhanced version of Actors Access, which gives you more features and is basically a better, more useful version of it. But you are not required to do that. That's where I say you have to kind of balance between those tools you want to invest in versus those things that you don't need to. But they're making it very clear you shouldn't be asked to spend money in order to turn in your tape to audition. Okay. But if you choose to be a part of a paid version of WeTransfer or the upgraded version of Actors Access, then that, again, that's an investment in your career, basically. All right. Okay. The slate. The producer may only request the following in a slate for a self-tape: performer's name, performer's height, for more performer's city of residence, the performer's current location if different from the city of residence, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Performer's age and birthday if the performer is a minor. So it's only if the performer is a minor. Otherwise, we cannot ask you for your age if you are over 18. Information about the performer's special skills, which the producer determines is necessary for performance for the role. So horseback riding. Yeah, I do a lot of Westerns. So of course I can say, and please let me know if you ride horses, or please let me know if you know how to swim or something like that. I can ask you that if it's a specific pertinence to the role that you are auditioning for. And then, and let me go back to a couple of the other ones. So performance city of residence and performance current location. Oftentimes we have performers who are from, let's say they're from Atlanta, and so they have an Atlanta agent, and maybe that's where their family lives and they can have a home base in Atlanta, but they're currently living in Nashville. So we'll ask for both, just so that we understand how far you are from where we're filming and what that might mean as far as not just financially, but also just logistically. We have to keep things in mind of, like, if something happens and we have to move a scene that was going to be in 2 weeks, move it up to tomorrow, and we're shooting in Charlotte, and we need to know if you're actually in Nashville and not in Charlotte, so that we can understand how that affects production. So let's see. Michael Euler says you can submit if you pay the monthly fee, or you can submit without it, but they will charge per submission. I'm wondering what service you're talking to about that. So can you even submit on Actors Access without paying for subscription? if if you have submitted on Actors Access, this is my understanding, and it may be something you want to inquire about. My understanding is Actors Access now, if you submit on a project for Actors Access and we send you an audition request and you are simply responding to an audition request that we have made of you, then you are able to submit to that audition request at no cost. That's my understanding. So you might want to double check that with Actors Access. But that's what I read. I believe that I read about 2 weeks ago. So double check that if you're not sure. And then let me know, because that's my understanding. If you submit, which there's no cost to submit, we request you to audition and you're simply fulfilling our request, then you should not have to pay for that. Let's see where we left off. Okay, so performers, age and birthday, if only if you're a minor. So if they ask you to tell your age, you can just, and you're an adult, you just say I'm over 18. You don't have to say your actual age. You just say I'm over 18. That's all that's needed. Let's see. We can request a head and shoulders shot and or a full body shot in portrait orientation, meaning vertical portrait orientation. The producer may not request any changes in camera angles or panning. For clarity, this does not preclude a producer from requesting that the performer change position to provide a profile shot. So it means what it means is that we can't say, okay, set up this and then turn around and reset up your whole camera in order to, give us a full body shot or something like that. But we can say do profiles and turn side to side. Now, profiles aren't as big a deal. Profiles are pretty standard in commercial casting, not as standard in TV and theatrical casting. So profiles aren't as big a deal. But basically, they're saying we can't ask you to change your camera position, but we can ask you to change your position, meaning turn and do profiles of each side to the camera. Let's see, 6, performers shall not be requested to appear in a self-tape in the nude or while wearing attire more revealing than a bathing suit that could be worn at a public pool. So in the faith world, you can be assured I'm never going to ask you to do a self-tape in the nude or anything revealing, but I know a lot of you guys do auditions and things and get audition requests for projects that are outside of the faith space. And so you should know those parameters as well, so that you're never put in an uncomfortable position and being asked to wear something revealing or lingerie or something you're not comfortable with. So let's see. 7, performers shall not be requested to perform a stunt in a self-tape. So no, you don't have to do a backflip or punch a wall or fall on the ground. Number 8, self-tapes for dancers shall be subject to the following additional requirements. And this, I've done several musical films, so this actually comes into play with those kinds of auditions. Once we're up and going on the series a week away, that is going to go to series. I believe it looks like it's going to go to series. We will be having those who audition also submit dance auditions. So this is speaking about if you're being asked to do a dance audition, a self-tape dance audition. So let's see, self-tapes for dancers shall be subject to the following additional requirements. A, the producer shall supply any music or sound required for the self-tape. So we have to supply the music. B, the producer shall supply specific choreography and may not ask the dancer or to choreograph or improvise a dance. And the specific choreography may not exceed 4 8-beat counts. Now, that was surprising to me because I have done auditions where we've asked them to just show us, 4 8 counts of their own dance. rather than sending specific choreography. And basically, we can't do that anymore. We can't ask you to have to create that or choreograph that for yourself. So, any of you dancers should be aware of that. Ian Wilson, A Week Away is becoming a series. It looks like it likely will be. We're hoping. It's very, very close. So it looks like it's going to be. So um it yeah, I just don't know if I can officially say, but anyway, I'm excited about it. Okay, continuing on with the choreography or with the dance tapes. The choreography or the dance tapes must be capable of being performed in an indoor space no larger than 8 by 8 by 8. So no longer do you feel like you have to go to a studio. You can, of course, but you shouldn't be required to have to go to a studio space or something where again, you have to go to extreme circumstances in order just to audition. And then last requirement, it must be for a solo performance, meaning we don't need you to go find other people to dance with or coordinate with other people to be able to do your self-tape dance self-tape. So that was all regarding dancing. Number 9, this is more for us. Self-tapes will be stored in a secure facility or on a secure system, which can only be accessed by individuals with legitimate business purpose. So that's your assurance that your tapes aren't, and your audition tapes aren't going to end up out on the web somewhere willy-nilly. They're the services and programs we use are all specifically for casting, and they're stored securely. Number 10, a producer may not make a self-tape available publicly without the prior written consent of the performer, which must be obtained at the time of use. So Don Overstreet, yes, this is the new SAG audition guidelines. So that means that if I'm teaching and I want to use a tape from someone's audition that they did with me prior, as I have in the past, I have used tapes from people who have auditioned for different projects. I go to them and I ask them, are you okay with me using your tape in my workshop or in my teaching? I have to get their permission before I can use that in a public setting like that. And okay, number 11. This is kind of a big change, and one you should know about. Let's see. The producer shall also provide an opportunity to interview for the role virtually, example, over Zoom or in person at the producer's election, in lieu of a self-tape by making available a window of time scheduled at the producer's discretion for performers to interview on a first-come, first-served basis. In scheduling interviews during that window, the producer shall make reasonable accommodation for performers with disabilities and shall consider sleep schedules for minors. So you can, if you get a self-tape audition request and it's a SAG-AFTRA project, you can now go reach out to the casting office or have your agent reach out to the casting office and say, I'd like to see if there's a in-person or Zoom option as opposed to a self-tape option. So what we do, there's no way for us to keep our schedules all wide open so that there's a potential spot for every single person we've asked to send in a self-tape. But what we do have to do now is make a certain window available and with some options for Zoom. In my case, Zoom, because I'm always reading people from all over the country. So in person isn't typically going to be the best option, but I need to make a Zoom option available for anyone who would prefer that over a self-tape on a first come, first served basis. So I will have a certain number of spots, a certain time schedule and availability for those spots. If you are interested in taking one of those spots and doing a Zoom audition versus a self-tape audition, you just need to reach out, find out if any of those spots are still available. If so, we'll schedule in and you're good to go. So that is an option for you on a SAG-AFTRA project. So just know that you do have that available to you. Now, you may inquire and the spaces are full. And in that case, then your only option is a self-tape option. But just remember, you do have that option. If it's really important to you, then you'll want to inquire about that quickly, or have your agent inquire about that quickly for you, so that you can try to get in one of those slots. So yeah, SAG-AFTRA, we now will make available slots for virtual Zoom auditions, which are live via Zoom. Okay. Let's see. Let me go. Hold on a second, Diego. Let me answer a couple questions. Jacob, if I'm remembering correctly, what this is, a week away, has kid roles. This is Valerie on her son's Facebook, waiting on it. It's a ways away. You guys don't worry about a week away yet. It's several months away. So yeah, I'll let you know when it's coming though. And kid roles are basically high school roles, because it's set at a high school camp. There aren't younger roles, but there are high school roles. So even then though, where we can, we're going to do 18 to play younger. But yes, it is based in a high school world for sure. Don Overstreet, I had a Zoom last week for a non-union project, but I didn't request it. They just asked if I could do it after my self-tape was turned in. Well, that does happen. I've done the same thing where we want to do the callback live via Zoom. And oftentimes that's what we're choosing to do. So we are still doing live via Zoom callbacks and auditions. So yes, you may get those requests without you requesting it of us. But kind of the big thing that was important was that actors felt like they at least had a chance to do a live via Zoom or an in-person audition, as opposed to a self-tape, if they felt like the self-tape process was really hindering them, or something that was very difficult for them to handle, and was becoming detrimental to their career. So that's where that came from, was people feeling like they just at least wanted the opportunity to either get back in the room or get back live where you're actually working or doing your audition with the casting director or the producer or the associate, whoever it might be on that first read. So that's where it came from. But yes, we do choose to do Zoom auditions sometimes because it's what we want to do, and that's, or the director's requesting it, or the producer, or it's just something we feel like we want to do for that role or that project. So yeah, that could be the case. Okay, let's see. Okay, I think we're on 12. To the extent the union has reason to believe a producer is not making good faith efforts to schedule a sufficient window of time for interviews, it may contact the producer, discuss its concerns on a case-by-case basis. So yeah, if you feel strongly and you wanted a live via Zoom audition, and you call and they say, sorry, we don't have anything available, and you're thinking, man, I only got this today, and you really feel strongly about it, then just reach out. When it says producer, in this case, they're talking about casting. Casting is working on behalf of the producer. You would reach out and we could figure out what the issue is and how we might be able to accommodate it. And we just do it on a case-by-case basis. Like I said, it's impossible for us to keep our schedule just open for, huge blocks of time and days, so that we have a spot for every single person who might ever want to audition, because it just isn't feasible. So, but we create a time, we have spots available. If you want one, you call, you inquire, or your agent does. If they're not available and you feel strongly, then you can reach out and say, hey, it really would make a difference for me to have a live via Zoom. Is there any way we could make that work? And we'll do our best to work with you. Okay, so E. So this is a different section, virtual interviews or auditions. The producer shall endeavor to respond to any inquiries from a performer whom it has invited to attend a virtual interview or virtual audition as to whether the role's already been cast. So this goes back to what I said before. If you are curious or wondering if maybe it's you're taping for a role that's already been cast, you can inquire and we will let you know before you go to the work of doing your self-tape. What I will say though is, again, doing a self-tape and us watching it is not a bad thing. But if you are concerned that it's may already be cast, or you might have heard rumors that it's been cast and you want to know, then just ask and we'll let you know. Dawn Overstreet, question, should we request a Zoom meeting when submitting a self-tape? So no, what this is talking about is when we casting request you to do a self-tape audition for us, if it is a SAG-AFTRA project. Now, if it's non-union, you just do your self-tape unless they tell you otherwise. But if it's a SAG-AFTRA project, then we follow these guidelines, which means when we send you an audition request, you have two options. You can either just do the self-tape request and do the tape and send it in by the deadline, or you can, before you self-tape, inquire as to whether there's a live via Zoom option instead of doing a self-tape. And if there's a live Zoom audition or an in-person, if you're in LA or one of the major markets, spot available, then you can get scheduled in that and you do that instead of your self-tape. But you don't send in a self-tape, then request a Zoom meeting. It isn't that. It's and it's not a Zoom meeting, it's a Zoom audition. So it's an either or. Dawn, you got it. Good. Okay, perfect. All right. Darren, if a role states negotiable rate for name actor, does that basically mean production is basically looking to fill that role with a name actor only? Well, usually I'll go off of breakdowns. There's one section where we just put what the rates are. And so I'll use the Blue Ridge breakdown as an example. The minimum day rate is $783, and the minimum weekly rate is $27.17. And then we have listed that series regular, recurring, and co-star may be negotiable based on name/resume. So what that means is there are certain roles that we could possibly spend more if it's someone who brings a name value and an audience to the role. And if that's the case, then we may determine that it's worth spending extra money that wasn't necessarily budgeted, but spending extra money in order to secure someone who brings an audience and brings some face recognition or name recognition to the project and to the role. So that's typically what that means. It in a breakdown, it isn't necessarily listed role by role that way, like this role we would, but in the case of ours, it was sort of the category of role that we would potentially, based again on name would consider spending more depending on what they bring, the value they could potentially bring to the project. So, okay. Chase Giacomo. How often does casting ask for a self tape for role X, but then offers or calls back for role Y, thinking it's a better fit? Is this unusual or regular practice on large? It's very common because sometimes again, we have limited information when we're deciding who to call in initially for roles. We're going off of if you're someone we aren't already familiar with, we're going off of your reel, we're going off your resume, off of your headshot, your look, and we're making our best educated assessment as to whether there's a role that could be a fit. And if so, which specific role is the best fit. And sometimes your tape comes in and we think you're great, but we realize now that we're seeing you and we're hearing you read the lines and perform, we're realizing that the role we thought you were going to be great in actually isn't the best fit. It's a different role. And so we'll switch you in the callback process or have you do a second tape for a different role because now we're realizing, oh, okay, that's a much better fit. So that is actually very common, not unusual at all. So, okay. Let's see. I kind of lost track of where I am. Oh, okay. Virtual interviews. Let's see, 3. Oh, we talked about before, again, we can't require use this kind of a camera or this kind of lights or this brand of background, any of that. We can't require that. Same thing applies on a virtual audition. So it's what we said before that was the same as the self-tape. You may not be asked to memorize any material or prohibited from holding sides or from using a prompting device during a virtual interview. So that what they're basically saying is that a virtual interview, when they're using that term, they mean a Zoom audition. And so those same rules apply, meaning you can hold your sides in a Zoom audition. You don't have to have it memorized. You can have notes somewhere where you can access them and see them. And and I'll just go back to what I said about this item with regards to the self-tape auditions, which is what this means is you don't have to spend your time working on memorization as much as you want to spend your time working on character development, connection, the emotional lifeblood of this character and the scene and what's going on, and getting to the point where you can live in this make-believe world of this character, live organically and honestly and truthfully. That's what we want. So learn how to hold the sides and use the sides if you need to in a way that doesn't in any way hinder your performance, because that's what's going to be most important. So you don't need to, Diego, you don't need to put up this. Actually, go ahead and put it up. Same thing. We're on the next section, actually. Performers shall not be requested to appear in the nude or wearing any more revealing than a bathing suit that could be worn in a public pool. And maybe for you, the bathing suit you would feel comfortable in a public pool is literally a t-shirt and shorts, or, a very, very modest conservative one piece. And if that's the case, then, that's your guideline. So let's see. And in that same point, number 4 was the performer shall not be asked to remove a cover-up until the performer is in a private virtual setting with casting personnel only. Again, in faith-based projects, not as big a deal, but for those of you who are doing projects outside of that, especially women, which tend to be put in more compromising positions, I think more than men. So just know your rules, know your rights. You're not going to be required to perform a stunt in an interview, and the same things apply for the virtual interviews or the Zoom interviews as with regards to choreography and dancers, which is We have to supply the music, we have to supply the specific choreography, and you can't be asked to improvise or self choreograph. It's no more than 4 8-beat counts, and it needs to be capable of being performed in a smaller physical space. You don't have to go to a studio to do any of that. Let's see. Let me zoom through the last of these. Okay, so that's what we went over. May not exceed 4 8 counts, capable of being for an indoor space that's 8 by 8 by 8, and must be for a solo performance, meaning you don't have to run and find people to do a dance with you or coordinate schedules with another actor to do your dance. So those guidelines are the same for self tapes as they are for virtual in-person auditions. All right. We're coming down the home stretch, you guys. Let's see. To the extent producer records a virtual interview or virtual audition, the recording shall be stored in a secure facility, same thing, and may not make the recording available publicly without prior written consent. So if you see your tape popping up somewhere and you didn't authorize it, then you need to track them down and tell them, if it's SAG-AFTRA, if you're SAG-AFTRA and the project was SAG-AFTRA, then they can't do that. But honestly, that's industry standard. Nobody, even in the non-union world, should be doing that at all. Anyone who's legitimate. So if you do find a tape of yours floating around somewhere and you didn't authorize its use that way, then I would track the person down and have a conversation if it's something you're uncomfortable with. So let's see, we're on 8. The provisions of the schedule to this codified, I'm telling you, reading these SAG agreements is just, you guys need to do it because you need to know what's in these SAG agreements. But I'm telling you, like, get something that, I don't know, some dark chocolate to keep you happy, because they could be a drudge. Anyway, quickly, I'll go through 8. Shall also apply to virtual interviews and virtual auditions, except as follows. So basically, all of the things that we read and talked about in other parts of the agreement apply to virtual interviews, basically in-person auditions, virtual auditions, self-tape auditions. Any requirement in the schedules, when they say schedules, what they mean is sections of the SAG agreement, the SAG basic theatrical agreement, or whatever agreement that the project is working under. When they say schedules, those are referring to different sections within the total SAG-AFTRA agreement. So if in somewhere one of those sections in the agreement, there's a requirement in one of those sections to compensate a performer for waiting time associated with an interview, shall be calculated based on the day performer minimum. So basically, there is a place in those agreements that says if you have to wait over an hour from your audition, your scheduled confirmed audition start time. So it doesn't mean if you show up 15 minutes early that's your start wait time. No, it starts at what would have been your regularly scheduled audition time. 1 hour past that, then you are, and it's a SAG-AFTRA film, you are due basically to be compensated in, I think, 15-minute increments based on the day rate. So yeah, if you're waiting over an hour. So yeah. I would tell you to give some grace, just to give some grace. I don't know. I'll be mums on that. But anyway, yeah, but that is something we are always keeping our eye on, is that we're not keeping someone more than an hour. There's an exception in like callbacks and chem reads and things like that. But we always tell you, I shouldn't say I always tell you in advance, this is the amount of time that you should plan for. It's going to go longer because we're doing this and this and this. And so you can plan for it, prepare for it, and schedule accordingly. So basically they're talking about, you thought you had a 12:15 audition and that's now 1:45 and you still haven't even had your audition yet. you should be compensated if for that time you've had to wait. If your audition was 12:15, at 1:15 the clock starts, and you should be compensated for that that excess time after after that first hour. Basically, we get an hour free, and then after that we have to start paying based on 15-minute increments based on the daily rate broken down. Okay, let's see. I'm going to skip ahead. Yeah, there's no sign-in sheets with virtual auditions. Any provisions in the schedules regarding parking spaces, parking costs, of course, don't apply because you're virtual. So wherever you parked your car outside where you're doing your audition is up to you, but those things don't apply. So that's it. We just went through basically all of the new audition guidelines from the new SAG-AFTRA agreement as of the latest round of negotiations. So that's the latest, greatest information. And Keeney says, what is the resolution we should use? So these SAG-AFTRA requirements say we can't ask for anything greater than 720p. I don't think you need anything greater than 720p. It's still high def, but it's not the extreme high def. I would say 720p is great. It's good quality. It's clear. Could you go less? Sure. What happens with these files is they do get compressed down for the formats, like the EcoCast system that stores them all. They're condensed and slightly compacted. The format size is. So the better you start out with the original image, meaning like a 720p, the better it will hold up as it is compressed and compacted by the programs that we're using. So I think 720p is a good standard place to be to ensure quality all across all the platforms, regardless of compression rate. So let's see. I'm glad. I'm super glad you guys are finding this helpful. I thought you might. As I looked at it, I thought we've never really talked about in detail these new things. And I know for me, it was important because these are new guidelines that I have to follow. And so not only should you be aware of the expectation that we would be placing on you, but also your rights now, if you are a SAG-AFTRA actor. And again, even if you're not non-union, like I said, I believe these will become the norm, just kind of industry standard norm. There will always be exceptions for producers and casting people that do things differently if they're not, especially if they're non-union. So, just go with the flow on those things. But this is the SAG-AFTRA regulations, and then what is becoming the industry norm. So anyway, I'm glad you guys found it helpful. And this is all information that is absolutely available to you if you go to the SAG-AFTRA website, and then you can click on like contracts and resources, I think, and then you can see all of the agreements, and you can find these pages. So you absolutely can find this for yourself and relook at it or revisit it at any point if you need to. Bonnie Johnson asks, when auditioning and you're listening to the other actor who has a long speech, how much reaction should you have that's not too much? You know what I say is, I want to see you connected in a real way to the scene and to the character, not only the character you're portraying, but an understanding of the character that you're in the scene with. And you should be reacting in a way that is honest and genuine and grounded to the information that you're receiving, keeping in mind that your character is receiving this information for the first time. So we want to see that. We want to see you processing what you're being told and trying to understand what's being said, and just all the ways we do in our normal human life, which is we receive information and we're processing it and thinking about it and putting it through the filter of who we are and how does this apply to me and what does this mean for me. All those things are happening at lightning speed in our brains, but our brains are constantly processing. And so that's what the sense we should get from you as you're listening. If we have included a long speech in the audition sides that is a character, a different character other than the character you're portraying, then we've done it on purpose because we want to see you engage and actively listening and processing the information that that other character is giving your character. And key is that the real key is that you are, it's the first time you're hearing this information. So, Monty, I was in a scene where a famous actor just stared at me. Well, process that too. For whatever reason, they're making that choice. And so, again, you got to put whatever choice they're making through the filter of who you are as that character. And how does that process into your world? And you make it work. They're not staring at you, Bonnie. They're staring at whatever the character is that you're portraying. And so how does that affect that character? So Dawn, I turned in a self-tape today that was 3 pages, hardly any it happens a lot. There's a lot of roles that are key and important, and we still need to have you read them, and we still want to see what you look like saying, even if it's 2 lines. We still want to see and hear and understand who you are as an actor and how you process that line and that world. And keep in mind, sometimes some of those lines, I think of like a waiter or server or secretary who greets someone. Say it's one of the lead characters that comes in, and the secretary says, "Hi, can I help you?" And is so and so in? I'm sorry, he's at lunch. Easy lines, simple, but we're deciding who's going to be in a scene across from our lead actor, who oftentimes is a name actor, kind of like what Bonnie was talking about. We take very seriously who we team with our higher level actors, and want to know not only will they act professionally and do what they need to do and hit their marks, but also that they know that they know how to conduct themselves, and they're not going to fangirl or fanboy over someone. They're just going to go and capably handle their job and do their work and be a great actor. So, okay. Dawn, I was listening to people argue. I get it. But if we do that, we're looking for the reaction. So all I can say to you guys, be in character. That's your job. That's what you do. You are creating characters, creating these people who live in imaginary worlds. You fill in that world. You become that character, and you process what is happening through the lens of that character. And that's what we're asking you to do, even if it's just listening to people argue. So, okay, I'm going to head off because we've been a little over our time, a little more than usual over our time. So, yeah, hopefully this was helpful. I'll see you guys next Tuesday, and we'll have more stuff to be able to do and talk about. Reminder, yes, Sam, living truthfully under imaginary circumstances. That's exactly right, Sam. Love it. Let's see. If there's anyone that you think will benefit from this information, share this out. It'll be accessible and available through the Facebook page, and I believe through YouTube, but certainly through Facebook and Instagram, and probably YouTube. So send the link, share it out so they can have the information as well. So we'll see you next Tuesday. Remember, mark on your calendar, The Forge. The next Kendrick Brothers movie comes out on August 23rd. And in the meantime, love you guys. I think you're awesome. Thanks for all of your comments and your questions and answering each other's questions as usual. You are just the best people in the world. Love you much. And we will see you next week. Bye.